Hi, I'm Dr. Reese, and today we're going to talk more about attachment, and specifically attachment trauma. What does that mean when trauma is associated with attachment? It means that there's been harm that has come through a relationship. It means that a relationship has not been a safe place for us. This can make it harder for us to trust future relationships as safe places because our real life experience has been that sometimes relationships aren't safe places. Now, attachment trauma is something that we as Americans are dealing with in a very large way here in our country because we are a country that values independence, that values self-sufficiency. And certainly there have been huge growths over the years in those areas for us. Being independent and having self-sufficiency have allowed us to make strides in many different areas. However, relationally, it's hurt us. So to understand our current attachment crisis and how attachment trauma is impacting all of us, we need to take a step back into the 60s and the 70s, back about 60 years, to when there was a movement called the Me Movement. And basically it said, we all need to be independent and we all need to be meeting our own needs because it's not good to depend on somebody else to meet our needs. It's not good to depend on somebody else to take care of us. We should all be taking care of ourselves. Now, when this happened, it did something that impacted attachment. So the building blocks of attachment are attunement, which is meeting each other's needs, which develops trust. And when we trust somebody, we're then able to be vulnerable enough to share emotions, which allows us to then attach. When we, in the 60s and the 70s, went through this period of time where we said, we all need to be self-sufficient, we all need to be independent, what we did was we removed attunement from our society. We no longer valued meeting each other's needs because we all now had the viewpoint that I meet my needs and you meet your needs. And we're all self-sufficient and independent. We take care of ourselves. We don't depend on other people to take care of us. So what we did was we moved from one end of the spectrum, dependence, to the other end of the spectrum, independence. However, neither is healthy. They are at opposite ends of the spectrum. What is healthy is the balance in the middle of interdependence. Interdependence says, I need you and you need me, and we're going to take care of each other. This is what's healthy. This is where we find good mental health, good emotional health. Because the honest truth is, nobody can meet all of their own needs. If you believe that you are truly independent and self-sufficient, you have believed a lie. Because there's no way that you can meet all of your own needs. In fact, your needs for connection, relationship, emotional support can only be met through a relationship with another person. So, for instance, I can make all the money in the world. But when I go to the grocery store, if the grocer did not stock the shelves, and if the truck driver did not deliver the food, and if the manufacturer didn't make it, well, my money will mean nothing because I need all of those people to be doing their part so that I can buy my food. In the same way that when I go to the gas station, I cannot provide the gasoline for myself to put into my vehicle. I am trusting the gas station attendant that he has ordered the gas and the trucker has delivered it, and that everybody who's involved in manufacturing it has done their part too. So I am not sitting at my desk all day calling manufacturers of food and gasoline, making sure that the deliveries are there on time so that I can get what I need. No, I cannot meet my own needs. I'm trusting all of those other people to meet my needs for me. I may have the money that makes the transaction possible, but I'm not able to fulfill that need for myself. In the same way that I cannot provide all of the emotional support that I need. I cannot provide deep, meaningful relationship connection for myself. Those are things that only other people can provide. In trusting somebody and being vulnerable with them, the meaning that we find in that, the depth of relationship that provides is something that can't be manufactured, that can't be bought through a transaction. It only comes through relationship with another person. So if we're being honest, we can't meet all of our own needs. We are, whether we accept it or not, interdependent on each other. Now, in the 60s and the 70s, when we had this transition in our society and went from saying, I'm going to be dependent to saying I'm going to be independent and missing the balance in the middle of interdependence, what that did was it, again, removed attunement from our relationships. And now we have relationships that are not built on trust. If you look at marriages today, we have many, many marriages where a husband and a wife each have separate bank accounts. They work, they deposit their money into their separate bank accounts, and they both contribute to the mortgage account. And they say, I will take care of my things, and you take care of your things, and we'll meet in the middle for the mortgage. There's no trust in that relationship. Because what we're saying is, I don't trust that you're going to take care of the things that I need or want. So I'm going to make sure that I can take care of myself. Again, that's not a trust-based relationship, and it's not an attachment-based relationship. That is a relationship based in independence, and that's not healthy for us. When I can trust you to meet my needs, when I can tell you what my needs are, or when you can recognize what my needs are without me even having to tell you, that is attunement, and that is a deep and meaningful relationship. So it's just important to recognize that this is what happened many, many years ago. Now, that was the 60s and the 70s. Moving into the 80s and the 90s, we had another shift in our society, and that was the introduction of personal technology. Now, the introduction of personal technology has, again, done a lot of really great things for us. It's opened a lot of doors. We have email, we have social media, and we have, well, you're seeing me right now on video on social media, right? So there are some really great things that came out of that. However, for our relationships, this was not a positive. So we have 472 Facebook friends these days, right? Hundreds of people following us on social media. However, if you have not met personally with a friend in the last 30 days for a cup of coffee, I hate to be the one to tell you this, but you have no friends. See, social media and technology have given us the illusion that we are more connected than we have ever been before. In fact, manufacturers of technology tell us that. However, that's not fact. That's marketing and advertising. The reality is we're more disconnected now than we have ever been before. And technology plays a big role in that. Instead of calling our grandfather and asking how he used to solve this particular problem, we just Google it. Instead of me calling and asking how your day was, I'll just check your Facebook page and see what pictures you posted. But the problem is that we're not our true selves on social media. So you will see tons of pictures of my latest vacation, and this is my new haircut, and this is my family. Don't we all look so happy? But these are the best parts of our lives. These are not the worst parts of our lives. You don't see any pictures posted of this was my kid pulling his little sister's hair out this afternoon, or this is my teenager who's driving me up the wall today. No. We don't post those things because that would be vulnerable. And if you ever do see somebody post something like that, being real and genuine and vulnerable, what is our response? Typically, we say, and even if we don't say it, we think it, I can't believe he just put himself out there like that. I can't believe she said that, right? How dare we be vulnerable with each other? How dare we? However, that is such a sad commentary of where we are as a society today, that we don't value vulnerability. But not only do we not value it, we look down on it. But that's because we emphasize independence and being able to take care of yourself and your emotions and solve your own problems. We value that more than anything else. And again, this is hurting us, because when we are disconnected in our relationships, then those relationships are dysfunctional. And when we have dysfunctional relationships, this creates distress for us because we need to be connected and we're not. So we don't feel fulfilled. We don't feel like we can trust. We don't feel like we can be vulnerable with anybody. When that distress comes, and it can come as a result of being disconnected, but it can also come as a result of life. Listen, life is distressing sometimes. So when I don't have support in my life because I am in disconnected and dysfunctional relationships, then when I face distress, when something goes really wrong, because it does in life, I lose my job, my teenager starts to use substances, my parent is diagnosed with a terminal illness, whatever the case might be, when I face distress, I then have the higher likelihood of developing disorders, anxiety, depression, because I'm trying to do it all by myself, but I can't. And who do I turn to? I don't have those deep and meaningful relationships where I can be vulnerable. So I'm all alone with all my stuff. And so disconnection in relationship leads to dysfunction, then distress, and an increase in disorders. That's exactly what we're seeing in our world today. We are seeing anxiety and depression numbers that are off the charts in adults, but also in children, because children are also feeling disconnected. Now, when I am having these distressful times in my life and I have nowhere to turn, when I'm feeling all alone to deal with my stuff, the really sad part of this is we all have the same stuff. And if we just started talking about it in vulnerability, then we wouldn't feel so alone. But because nobody's talking about it, we just feel like we're the only ones who are going through it. There are lots of other people who are going through the same things that you're going through. We just need to talk about it. However, let's come back to our children for a minute. What has happened to our children along these lines? So for our kiddos, they need parents. Remember that what's been happening in our society is we have removed attunement from our relationships, right? So I don't need you. I expect you to meet all of your own needs because I am busy meeting all of my own needs. And therefore, I am independent. So now when I have a child who needs me, because children need us, children cannot take care of themselves. They can't feed themselves. They can't dress themselves. They cannot transport themselves back and forth to places. They need us for so many things, for everything. When somebody now needs me for everything, this can start to feel suffocating. This can start to feel overwhelming. And so as a parent, I'm going to move my child to independence as quickly as I possibly can, because the quicker that they can become independent, the better I'm going to feel. And then I'm going to be able to get back to taking care of myself again. So we see 3-year-olds who know how to microwave a Hot Pocket and feed themselves lunch. That's a sad commentary of where we are today, guys. It's important to just recognize what's happening for our children. When we push them towards independence, now remember, independence in and of itself is not even a healthy goal. Interdependence is. But we're pushing our children towards independence way before it would be developmentally appropriate for them to do that. And when we put these expectations on them that are unrealistic and that they cannot meet, then our children are going to experience anxiety and depression. In addition to not being able to meet the expectations of independence that we have laid on them, they are feeling completely disconnected from parents as well, because parents are not parenting in an attachment-based way when they are not consistently meeting the needs of, for their children. And they may have food in the house and they may have clothes on their backs, but another need that we have is love, connection, relationship. And so when we're pushing our children towards independence because we don't want them to need us, then so often what we're actually doing is saying, I don't have time for this right now. I don't have time for you right now. And our children read it that way. So they feel disconnected. They don't come to us for problem solving because we've made it known that we don't have time to do that. And they don't necessarily come to us for comfort either because we've given them the communication, verbally or non-verbally, that we need them to take care of themselves. So what this does to our children is causes them to feel very disconnected from parents. And again, leads to depression and anxiety. And that's exactly what's happening with our kids right now. We have more depression and anxiety in children than we've ever had before. And this should be an alarm for every single one of us. In the 50s, 60s, we didn't have children who were suicidal or who were so anxious and so depressed that they needed large amounts of medication and mental health hospitalizations to stabilize them. However, there may have been one or two. It was an infrequent thing. Now it's a very common thing, and it all comes back to attachment. It all comes back to the relationship that our children have with their parents. So when we look at attachment, we also have to acknowledge that it's generational. So the way that you were parented is the way that you're going to parent. And the way that your parents attached to you is the way that you are going to attach to your children, unless you have done some work to become very aware and very intentional about changing the way that you are parenting. Now, if you were raised in the 80s and 90s, which is a lot of our parents today, then chances are your parents were parenting you in the way that they were parented. Your parents were parented in the 60s and the 70s. So if in the 60s and the 70s, your parents did not get attachment-based parenting, then when they parented you in the 80s and the 90s, chances are you didn't get attachment-based parenting, which means that as you're now raising your children, you may not know the way to an attachment-based relationship with your child. So that's why it's important to learn about this. That's why it's important for this generation to make a shift back. Listen, we've made some really good shifts in technology and in our society today and families. But this is one shift that we've been making that's not so good. And it's okay to look back and say, you know what, that was something that actually was good. Parents who were connected to their children in attachment-based relationships. I'll say more about attachment-based parenting in other videos, but just know that this is something that we all need to be working on. This is something that we all need to be bringing to our children because we can't let another generation go through the attachment trauma and the attachment crisis that this one is. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you next time.